The Run Lift Mom podcast is brought to you by my efforts as a Zia Active independent representative and partners Hello Woofy for social media, Red H Nutrition, and Audible. Audible is the newest of this lineup, and if you want to try Audible free, all you've got to do is visit audibletrial.com/runliftmom. Welcome to the Run Lift Mom podcast, where we're talking about running, lifting, and momming, not necessarily in that order. And today we're going to talk about it in the lens of pregnancy and postpartum. I am so blessed to have Carolina Stone, the head of the Street Parking Moms Prenatal and Postpartum Division, as well as she's the co-creator of Street Parking Maintenance Program. You guys, this woman is passionate about movement. She's got a deep background in yoga and has multiple fitness certifications, including CrossFit. However, she's not some lady meathead that you're envisioning, so don't misunderstand me. You shouldn't be afraid of her. She is the most empathetic health professional and fitness person I've ever had the pleasure of speaking with, and I've been in this space for over a decade. Y'all, Carolina is a mom. She's passionate about movement and mindset, and we talk about postpartum recovery as well as the importance of community in motherhood. This episode is awesome, and without further ado, Carolina Stone. All right, welcome Carolina Stone from Street Parking Mamas to the Run Lift Mom podcast. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
You know, we are going to talk about maximizing time in the lens of postpartum recovery. So after we've had our baby and kind of getting back into the swing of things. Do you mind kicking us off by just introducing yourself a bit? You're, of course, a mom, but this is also your jam. You've got quite the experience in sport performance.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I am a mom of a 7, almost 8-month little girl, but I have been coaching CrossFit and teaching yoga for almost, 7 or 8 years now. And now I'm currently the street parking pregnant and postpartum moms coach. So I help women navigate all of the modifications and adaptations to their fitness, but potentially a lot of other things that might need to happen during the motherhood transition.
That is so fantastic. You know, it's a community within a community, and I know it's a blessing to many. Do you mind giving us a peek into what your pregnancy and postpartum journey looked like from a fitness perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel pretty lucky that my pregnancy was relatively comfortable. I do attribute some of that to visiting a chiropractor regularly, trying to be mindful of my nutrition and inflammation and that kind of stuff. But my movement was really comfortable. It was like a really special time for me where I got to be intuitive with my movement. I mixed yoga and breath work with street parking programming, which is more like HIIT programming or CrossFit style. I did strength training and lifting, and that part was really, really special and actually pretty enjoyable for me. The postpartum part was much physically enjoyable or comfortable. I had a pretty, challenging birth experience, I can say. I pushed for a really extended amount of time, and that probably contributed to a birth injury where my pubic bone separated and a postpartum hemorrhage. And that combined with my baby having some tongue ties, I just struggled quite a bit in those early weeks and months. Physically, I couldn't walk for about 2 weeks. I couldn't stand upright. I had to do a lot of healing after the hemorrhage, and there was a lot of back and forth with figuring out my breastfeeding journey with my little one. So the immediate postpartum period was really, really, really hard, to say the least.
Oh, I mean, my heart goes out to you because, of course, I am a mother and I've had a couple of pregnancies, and I know how hard nursing is in general. So take out
Mm-hmm.
any other type of rehabilitation. And I know there are two types of people listening. One, they're mothers, and they can reflect back to also maybe how hard that nursing journey was if they chose that, or even just recovery with a healthy delivery. But then there are maybe
Right.
people that are expecting, right? And they have their birth plans perfectly written out, and they know what music's going to be playing. And then they're like, oh, wait, hold on. That doesn't always happen just the way I wrote it out with my doula. Um, may I ask
Yeah.
you to, I love what were saying about intuitive movement, but I really want to focus on that postpartum. What
Mhm.
did your self-talk sound like when things didn't exactly go according to plan?
Well, to be quite honest with you, there was a lot of, at first, and somewhat maybe still a little bit, a lot of wondering if I had done something wrong or if there was something that I could have done better. And as much as I've coached other women through similar experiences, and I know that there are some variables that you cannot ever predict. It doesn't matter how fit you are or how prepared you are, or how many books you read. There are some things you cannot predict, and some things you cannot control. And it has nothing to do with you or your abilities or your fitness or anything like that. So I had to navigate some of that for myself, and and some acceptance. Really, in the first week I saw a chiropractor and I spoke to a physical therapist, and they were telling me that it could likely be a year before I would be able to do something like a lunge. And for someone who coaches fitness and it's a huge part of my lifestyle, that was pretty devastating. Fortunately, things changed for me and I recovered much faster. But still, in that early time period, it was like, well, who am I if I'm not going to be able to work out? Or how long is this going to take? And what does this mean for just everything? I had so much identity wrapped up in movement.
Probably not to the degree that you experienced it, but I've got to think that a lot of moms feel like that. With the
Mhm.
women that you have coached postpartum, do you find that they feel that as well? Like, oh, I need to find my new fitness identity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's maybe one of the biggest struggles is understanding that we're not going to be the same person, and that doesn't mean that we can't be as strong or as fit as we were pre-pregnancy, but it just means that it's going to look different. And in that in-between period where you are figuring it out and recovering and rehabilitating, it can be very, very uncomfortable. And that during a time when you're already really vulnerable, dealing with like a little one and a newborn and life changing and roles changing in your family and in your workplace and all of that, we want some sense of control. And then when we find that we don't have as much control over or the expectations around our control of like the fitness is different, it's a struggle. It can be a struggle mentally for sure.
Right. Talk to me on the physical side a little bit about why it's important. And now we're talking general. I want to dip back on some of your experience in coaching women postpartum.
Mhm.
Why is it so important that we rehab fully physically before we get thrown back into maybe whatever we were doing pre-pregnancy or during pregnancy in some cases?
Yeah. So the body, and specifically your core and pelvic floor, goes through a massive transformation. Uh, things are moving and shifting, and the structure is changing, and the tissue changes, and there is a huge demand placed on our bodies through pregnancy and through the birth experience, whether it's cesarean or vaginal. And we have to respect those changes. And that's not to say that, pregnancy or birth is an injury, although there can be some injuries. But it should be treated with just as much as respect as you would give to, let's say, if you're recovering from a shoulder injury or an ACL repair or something like that. You would take the time to do your physical therapy exercises, and you would allow that to heal, and then you would gradually progress over time. Well, the same goes for our core and our pelvic floor, and maybe even more so if you think about how your core and pelvic floor, that entire system as a whole really, is your powerhouse. That's where everything else comes from. So you're not going to be able to move your arms or your legs well if there's no stability in your core. And so we have to start from the foundation, or building a foundation again, and then gradually progress from there, so that in the long run, we're not coming up against setbacks like, urinary incontinence or lower back pain or other symptoms like that. But then even on a smaller scale, you could come up against just like a plateau in your strength or your fitness level, and maybe assume that it has to do with how you're working out, but it actually might have a little bit to do with what your foundation is and what your body is just not really capable of going beyond if there's no strong foundation.
Fantastic point. I realize that your community specifically, they've got their antenna up about some of this stuff. Do you mind filling in the blanks, though, for someone who might be listening and maybe is not involved in the Street Parking Mamas community? What types of symptoms do women see when they get back in the mix?
Yeah. So it can be, I think one of the most common or obvious symptoms is something like diastasis recti, where you'll see the separation in the abdominal wall, and that can look a little bit like coning or doming. To be honest with you, that's, I would say, maybe one that I am usually less worried about. It's definitely like an important visual piece of feedback, or maybe aesthetic piece of feedback, but the other things that I'm looking for are like lower back pain, urinary incontinence, urinary urgency, really leaking of fluids or air of any time and from anywhere when you don't want it or mean to, and pain during intercourse, a sensation of heaviness in your pelvic floor. Any of those are signs and symptoms that there is something more serious going on with how you're managing the pressure within your core.
I'm so glad you're pointing out. I mean, in certain circles, and this is definitely those high achieving fitness types, ladies, I know you're listening. In certain circles, there's like this big joke, like, oh, panty liners for PR, double unders are on the whiteboard. Ha ha ha, we're going to pee the floor. And what I hear you saying, Carolina, is no, not normal. This is a symptom. If you're feeling like something's not right, you need to get it checked out.
Yeah, I think, we hear the phrase thrown around, or I hear it a lot, that it might be common but not normal. And I hesitate with that a little bit because so many of us experience it, and I'd hate for someone to feel like their experience isn't normal. But I think really all of that is just trying to say that your body is trying to tell you something. And if it's not functioning properly, and if you are peeing when you're not wanting to, that's not functioning properly. So your bodily functions and any indications of pain is a sign that something's not right, and you don't have to live that way. I know that sometimes it can be kind of daunting to feel like, oh man, I got to do all this rehab and physical therapy, and I got to change my workouts, and I can't do double unders or whatever it is. So that can feel like maybe something you're not ready to take on, but, and I get that, but yeah, you don't have to live that way. There's other options. There's other tools and resources to help you heal and manage that.
With the women that you work with, I mean, we know that if we had a vaginal birth, right, at about 6 weeks, the doctor is more than likely going to give us clearance to exercise. For a C-section these days, it's more like 8 to 10 weeks. In your experience with other, women as a general sample, do you find that that's right on the money? How would a woman know, okay, I'm ready? If doctor gives her the clearance, what you mentioned listening to your body. What should she be aware of as she dips her toe back in the water?
Right. Yeah. So that clearance part from the doctor or the OB can be so confusing and kind of misleading because essentially they're mostly looking for, are you still bleeding and is there any infection? And at that point, you don't have either one of those symptoms, then they clear you for exercise. They're not necessarily looking for what is the tone or the tissue quality of your pelvic floor or your abdominal wall. And depending on the type of working out that you're planning on doing or trying to doing, there could be a lot to work through or to prepare. So I would say it starts with your ability to manage and control the way that you're breathing. Sometimes after birth, it's really hard to be able to breathe down into your belly because you had a baby in there for a long time. Mm-hmm. So managing the way you breathe, how you breathe, when you breathe, if you breathe and you feel like you're bearing down or there's a lot of pressure. So that's probably the most simple thing I would start with. And then preparing your joints, which especially if you're still nursing, but even not, there's still a lot of hormones that are going to affect your joints and the connective tissue in your body. So gradually adding more load and demand to those joints. And then your coordination and speed and intensity. So it's I think really like there's a lot of things to look out for, but the bottom line is that it should, or hopefully is just a gradual approach where you're like, okay, today I'm going to work on my ankle mobility, or whatever. And then gradually start to go from there rather than saying, I'm going to just head out the door and start sprinting. There's a lot of things that are involved in sprinting. So
I love that you're speaking to modifications, but then also, guys, hear Carolina when she says your OB is not your physical therapist. And so what they need to check the boxes on is going to be a lot different than what someone who is concerned about healthy movement patterns would be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there any other, I know, again, you're a leader amongst a group of fit women. You're the coach for Street Parking Mamas. What are maybe a tip or two, like what are your favorite tips to give new moms that are getting back into exercise?
Find a way to adapt your mindset. So it sometimes comes down to if you can step back for a moment and try to remember, reconnect to, or just plan what your long-term health and fitness goals are. And maybe write them down somewhere, write them on a board or something so that you remember what you're really working towards and working for. And then from there, understand that getting out the door at 6 weeks postpartum to start throwing around a bunch of heavy weight or running long distances is likely not going to get you to that long-term goal. So shift the perspective that if you are slow and intentional at the beginning, hopefully your long-term goals or your long-term health will thank you. And to find a community that encourages and supports you in sticking to this plan that might be a little bit slower than you want, so that when you do possibly get impatient or maybe even come up against a setback, you have a tribe that is there to support you and say, hey, it's okay. That marathon is going to be there for you next year. Let's work on getting you well right now. And that's not going to make you feel bad for taking your time with it,
I
Hopefully you
think
got people that are supporting you.
in taking our time, we're really maximizing our time because we're doing things. I often say, and I'm a marathon runner, so I say cheesy things like this. I always say, like, you can't run a marathon before you've done your first mile. And that's to speak to doing things in the right order. Now, you threw me a softball because I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about street parking mamas. You know, I'm a military spouse, and we often talk about the importance of having battle buddies, people that can talk you off a ledge. Can you talk to me a little bit about the community aspect of your tribe?
Yeah. Well, it's really special, and well, I guess I'm kind of partial, but what I love about it is that we all have this commonality of fitness as a lifestyle, and we all are coming from totally different backgrounds, and everyone is a different type of mom. And there's a lot of respect for all of the different types of motherhood experiences. And there's a lot of support for just like a really healthy lifestyle. And sometimes that means like encouraging each other to back off and take another rest day, when you're like not getting any sleep, or maybe you had an injury or something like that. And it's also encouraging each other to, hey, why don't you just like get up and move for 10 minutes? It doesn't have to be at crazy intensity. Like Miranda Alcaraz always says, is just do more than nothing. So there's this really nice balance. And what I love about it is that I think it's realistic, it's practical, it's keeping it just super real and doable.
I love it. And then I'll also mention that you've got a podcast. The Street Parking Mamas podcast actually explores birth stories and motherhood stories as well. So it takes that community even a step more intimate or deeper.
Yeah, the podcast came around after my birth, and I just had so many of the street parking mamas reach out to me and, just share their support and let me know that they were thinking of me. And that meant so much during a time that was really challenging. And a lot of them shared some of their stories, and I realized I wasn't alone in my experience. And that was just so, so powerful and moving to me. And I was able to connect and make really strong friendships with a lot of them. And I wanted to be able to share that on a bigger platform, on a, wider level. And so that's what we're doing. We just sit down, we have a cup of tea, and we share birth stories.
I love it. We're going to chat, of course, to all of your stuff below. Depending on where somebody's listening, they can either click details or swipe up in the player they're in. Don't go anywhere quite yet, though, Carolina, because I want to see if we can do just a few fun, unrelated to postpartum fitness, rapid fire with you.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. So just say the first thing that comes to mind. We're just going to go through some quick stuff here. The first thing I got to ask, leggings or joggers?
Ooh, these days, joggers.
I think every mom out there is like, yes, sister, yes.
I got my fancy joggers and my comfy joggers, though.
Oh, you're a woman after my own heart. Okay, where is your favorite place to work out? I'm thinking outdoor, garage, gym. Where's your favorite place to work out?
Right now it's my garage, but I do love some good sunshine.
Awesome.
A little bit of outdoor, yeah.
Awesome. And when you're working out, are you choosing program A, B, C, or shift?
I usually do shift, but with program A movements. I combine the two.
I like it. And those that aren't in the street parking community are like, what in the world are these crazies talking about? But guys, the street parking programming actually allows for the equipment that you have at home. So shift, as an example, is it's really intended for beginners, but real talk, the good ones, we've been doing it with all four of our kids for PE in this time of being at home. And program C is for sandbags. There's a program for dumbbells and also for barbells. It's really, really nice way to use what you've got. I love street parking because it meets you where you are in terms of both fitness as well as the stuff that you have at home.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then finally, tell me if you are doing a blow it out, have fun, celebrate with food meal. What does that look like?
Pizza, and just straight up pepperoni pizza. It's my favorite.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to link to all of your stuff, Carolina. This is so fun. I love that you are a fitness professional that clearly has a ton of knowledge, but also you come to the table with large doses of empathy and compassion. I can feel that as I'm speaking with you. And I want to thank you. I know that's why the street parking community and street parking mamas love you as well.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot.
Thank you so much, Carolina Stone, for coming on the Run Lift Mom podcast. You guys, this was an awesome guest because she's both a mother as well as a fitness professional. It's the best of both worlds, and I loved hearing that personal journey as well as some tactical coach-style tips and just the empathy in her voice as she described the different journeys that we may go on. She is awesome. I hope that you will check out the Street Parking Mamas podcast. I'm going to link that in the show notes. Depending on the player you're in, you'll either swipe up or click details. Thank you again, Carolina. So glad to have you on. And guys, remember, until I get into your earpiece again, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. That's from 1 Timothy 4:8, and this has been the Run Lift Mom podcast. Hey, Run Lift Mom listeners, you know I'm the mom of 4 kids under age 5, and therefore I am always looking for ways to work smart, not hard. Anchor is the smartest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you why. First of all, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, but Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so then it can be heard on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole lot more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It is quite literally everything you need all in one place. And y'all, it's free. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's time for the Zaya Active item of the week. And this week, it's the Light and Tight Pocket Hustle Shorts. That's right, I said light and tight pocket shorts. Just in time for spring and summer, your favorite leggings are now in shorts. Here's what I love about this. The pocket is still deep enough to be functional. Hold the phone. Yes, hold the phone. It can hold your phone. The inseam starts at about 3 inches and goes up incrementally from there depending on your size. Speaking of size, this is something that you want to size up 1 in. So if you're familiar with our light and tight leggings, you want to go up a size. If you're not, I want you to hit up the show notes, shoot me an email, tell me your favorite brand of activewear, and I will make a recommendation for you. Real talk. I got my normal legging size in these initially, and let's just say, looked like a stuffed sausage up in those shorts. I love these shorts, but you got to get the right size. So the Light and Tight Pocket Hustle Shorts, the link's in the show notes. Hit me up for sizing guidance. You're gonna love them. All right, Katie Danger with Red H Nutrition. Listeners can dip back into episode 35 to hear the entire episode on sexy versus non-sexy supplements, and you blew my mind with the latter, especially about A to Z vitamins. Can you tell me about Factor 10?
Yeah, Factor 10 multivitamin, it is a different approach than your typical A to Z Centrum or one a day that you might be taking currently. So we focus more on herbal ingredients. It does have your daily allowance of vitamin D, A, and zinc because those are really important for general health and wellness. But we took a focus on thyroid and liver health. So what that means is we're focusing on the cellular level of health and wellness. And if you focus on the cellular level, your entire system is going to be optimized. And things that people feel, they have better hair, better skin, better nails, and they generally feel better and they're getting their full spectrum wellness.
Thank you for listening to the Run Lift Mom podcast. This began as a passion project in February 2019, and now, you guys, it is legit my favorite thing to do each week. Record with the guests that come on Run Lift Mom, and then share their knowledge and expertise with you. I love this. I have done a lot of things right with this show. The thing that I've done wrong, I haven't asked you to rate, review, and subscribe enough. You guys, this is how other people find the show. So please do me a solid, rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you for being a listener of Run Lift Mom. Hey, Run Lift Mom listeners, if you are here for business or entrepreneur type topics, I want to let you know I have a new show. It's called Serve Then Sell, and it's available on 10 different channels, including Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. The idea here is not to just lump in the business topics with running, lifting, and momming. I want to create more of a separation. I hope you will come hang out with me over there. Again, the name of the show is called Serve Then Sell. Enter that into any search box and you're going to see it come right up. We'll be running, lifting, and momming over here. I hope you'll still hang out. Check in over there if it will be a blessing for you.